Welcome, everybody. My name is Jeremy McCool. I'm the founder and CEO of HEVO. I am so happy to have all these wonderful people here with me today. Just so you know, Barry will make an introduction officially of who everyone is, but this is going to be an interesting topic of discussion because right now, what we see in the world is autonomy and wireless charging coming together. And we're thankful to have so many wonderful experts at the table with us today. So if you don't mind, Farah, go ahead and take it off.
Sure. Yeah, so like Jeremy said, my name is Farah Perry. I'm part of the marketing team here at HEVO. So we have a great discussion lined up for you guys today. You've already met Jeremy, but he's the founder and CEO of HEVO. He is a U.S. Army combat veteran and a graduate of Columbia as well. His deployment in Iraq led to the start of HEVO. We also have on our panel Anuja Sonalker, who is the founder and CEO of SteerTech, which is one of our partners here at HEVO. And she is recognized among Automotive News top 100 leading women in automotive. And she brings 2 decades of experience across the automotive and U.S. cybersecurity sectors. We also have John Rigdon, who is the Global Customer Director at DHL CSI, and he comes with extensive expertise in automotive logistics, EV battery supply chains, and fleet electrification strategies for major logistics operations. And finally, we have former U.S. Army Lieutenant General Ross Coffman, who was the director of Next Generation Combat Vehicles, and he brings 35 years of military innovation leadership experience. So we have a great panel for you guys, and I say let's jump right into it with that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Farah. And so, just so everybody knows, Ross is my former boss. I used to work for him when I was in the Army. We celebrated Veterans Day yesterday. John is a former gunnery, what we say, gunny sergeant, or gunny, if you will, in the Marines. So we also celebrated Veterans Day with him. And they just celebrated their 250th birthday for the Marines. So thank you very much to all of you for your service. And also, I would like to point out that, look, we have some really interesting things to turn on, but let's start with the video first, because I think that paints the picture accurately as best as possible about what it is that we're actually doing and what we've already achieved. So if you give me just a moment here, everyone, we're going to go ahead and do a video. It's only about, I think, a 1-minute video, so it's not that. All right. So I'll talk a little bit through this. And of course, why don't you weigh in as well if you can on your side, Anuja? So this technology integration was done over the course of just a couple of weeks. We got this vehicle, the 4D Transit, from the team over at Steer. They let us borrow their car. And so we received that in Brooklyn. They're headquartered in Maryland over by Annapolis. And so when we received it, we'd never worked on a 4D Transit before. We've never touched one. We didn't know anything about it. But in the matter of just about 2 weeks or so, we were able to fully integrate that vehicle and make it work with our wireless charging system. So it was totally integrated. Then we transported that vehicle back to Maryland to the team over at Steer so that they could integrate that system also with their Steer autonomous tech. And then finally, that came together for this demonstration that you're going to see here that we've been taking on a roadshow now for the last couple of months. We just did a full roadshow both in Detroit and Austin with the exact technology that you're going to see here. And it's very simple. The vehicle is going to pull up on its own, totally autonomous, no drivers. It's going to dock over our wireless charging pad, and then it's going to start charging. And that's what the beauty of the simplicity is. It removes all frictional points that are blocking the acceleration of electric vehicles, especially in depot areas that need to have better options for both the autonomous side and the charging side to make that a much more accelerated and efficient way to do charging and electric vehicle docking. Okay, so that being stated, we're going to go through this video. Of course, weigh in as you see fit on your side. Anuja, please. And so, nonetheless, here we go. So September 15th, we're in Annapolis, Maryland. This vehicle's pulling forward totally autonomously. As you can see, it's going to pull up and it's going to stop at the pad. And it takes somewhere around 15 seconds or so to come to a full start and charge cycle. And that's just normal. That happens with plug-in charging as well. But that blue light indicator demonstrates that the charging cycles already began. And so, with that stated, Anuja, would you like to talk a little bit about what's going on here from your side on the technology side with the autonomous tech?
Absolutely. So imagine a depot where vehicles are moving themselves. They charge themselves, they even inspect themselves. There's no waiting, there's no wandering, just continuous, coordinated motion, right? So that's depot autonomy in action. And you have one vehicle. Imagine you have one vehicle, but you have many vehicles doing exactly that in different phases. Like the system is running itself and the humans are running the strategy. So what you saw there was exactly that, is a vehicle running itself. It did some operations, something somewhere, but then it needs to come back and charge itself. So it has to get ready for either the next day or get another charge so it can continue to go in action. And for that, you need to be able to do two things properly. One is the automation has to run, and then the charging has to work. So now what you saw is you saw two different technologies running on the same native vehicle, actually coming together, holding hands in hand, communicating with each other, synchronizing with each other, so that together they could deliver that endpoint activity that you just saw. One technology drove the vehicle to where it needed to go to, and then high precision dock itself to the charging. And then the other technology has to understand, okay, it's now docked. Now we start charging. So you see that interplay there is actually we don't give it enough credit, but that interplay there is actually extremely important technical integration between two technologies to really create a summation that is greater than the parts by itself. So,
What's the tolerance that you can park a car?
it's about given many variables in there, but it's about 2 centimeter level precision.
Wow, it's remarkable. So, when it comes to docking the vehicle, and these vehicles aren't traveling at highway speeds either. This is a technology, as I understand, that's native on the Ford e-Transit, and you're utilizing the native ADAS systems and then taking your technology and helping it to work within a fleet depot constricted area. Is that correct?
So for different vehicles, there are different levels that we can extract capability from the basic vehicle itself. So in the case of this transit, it has some ADAS equipment already on there. So because of that, the base is set higher. So yes, you can extract capability that is already native in the vehicle, and you can use that to then control the vehicle using those capabilities. And then now you're supplying the brains and the strategy in the mission, and then the precision and determining how you can do this. There are some vehicles where you don't have ADAS, you don't have capabilities, then you have to bump them up to that baseline in order to do that. But so
What's the technology that's on that vehicle in the Ford e-Transit specifically that's being used for the autonomous side of the driving system?
so it has drive-by-wire. So that vehicle has the capability of doing electronic throttle control,
Hmm.
electronic steering control. We have to electronically actuate the brakes and use the brake systems in the vehicle, but it's not electronically braking natively by itself. And then we have to add cameras for the vision. And then we are natively using radar and ultrasonics that are present on the vehicle.
And my understanding is it's not a huge lift from the technology side to set up that vehicle, right? You don't have to put a bunch of hardware on it. It's pretty much a low lift as we understood it from our integration that we did together. And it's really interesting is that when we think about bigger fleets, the biggest thing that they're constantly thinking around is the cost, right? They want to be able to always look at what is the overall cost, the total lifetime cost, we'll say, but also the upfront CapEx side. Interesting. We got introduced together, both HEVO and Steer. So I got introduced to Anuja from my friend Ross. Ross, again, I've known for the better side of almost 20 years now, which has been really not to always his benefit, but certainly to mine. But I would say, Ross, what have you done in the Army and your previous roles that have helped you on this journey to get to where you're working side by side with companies like us, Steer and HEVO and other ones? What is it that really brought you here, and how did we get that introduction? That was really remarkable.
Yeah, so when I was in the Army, I basically was either fighting or trained to fight for many, many years. And General Officer Branch called me up and said, "You're moving to Detroit." said, why the hell would you send me to Detroit? There's no fighting going on there. And they said, oh, don't be so fast. There's fighting in Detroit, but that's not why you're going. The reason why you're going is because you're going to build all the new vehicles for our Army. And one of those was a robotic combat system. Okay, so a robotic combat vehicle, RCV, that included the entire autonomy stack, payloads, etc. So I got 4 years of education on autonomy and robotics while I was there. I call it my PhD light. And so as I've exited the Army, I get to meet and talk to just most interesting folks that I actually worked with in solving those problems for the Army. So when I was sitting there thinking about Anuja, and she's a little, both of you are a little humble. Her precision autonomy is best in class. Okay, you have things going across highways, you got driverless vehicles moving all around Austin, Texas, where I live. But when you start talking about a loading yard, that is one of the most dangerous areas that you can get. You have heavy machinery moving around, everyone's in a rush, vehicles crisscrossing, whatever. Anuja's been able to take the human out of that. So now you have precision, accuracy. It drives down safety incidents as close to zero as you can get. And it's more timely, and you don't have to hire a driver to do that. Okay, so when the driver comes to work, he or she just gets in and starts delivering. And that is a big deal because now you get 8 hours on the road versus 6 hours on the road, and you can hire less people, you can cover more routes, however you want to accomplish that. And then Jeremy, the rest of the story is he came to my office and said, I want to leave the Army. I said, what do you want to do, kid? And he said, now this is 2029, I think, 2028.
2009. 2008, actually. Yeah.
2008. He said, well, I think electric vehicles are coming online soon, and I'm going to create this company that you just drive over a device and it starts charging it without having to plug it in. Now, in 2008, I wasn't sure whether to just get him out of the Army as fast as possible or send him to get a drug test, because no one thought that electric vehicles were going to be at the magnitude they are today, but you had the vision. And so this is, like a Reese's peanut butter cup, right? Like, let's put chocolate and peanut butter together and make magic. So when I met both of y'all, I said, this is really, really simple. So I made the introduction, and that's how we started on this journey. And I think that all too often people focus on a single technology, but those that can back up and see the entire infrastructure that's going to be required and invest in that will be on the leading edge of profitability, effectiveness, efficiency, safety, training, always, every time. And so I'm so happy that y'all are working together. And that video, it looks really simple. That wasn't simple. That was really hard. So
decades of work. Absolutely. And Ross, the other thing is that as we think through the process of how do we accelerate this into depots, there's actual depots out there operating many, many electric cars today. DHL, as we know, has spent something along the lines of about $500 million already on electrifying its fleet. John has been at the forefront of that for the team over at DHL. And obviously, just want to say this up front, there's no announcement here about anything to be worked on together. But we did at one point, John, our relationship started about 4 years ago when we came together to put a proposal into the Department of Transportation. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I will. So it was pretty interesting because the first time I was introduced to any type of autonomous vehicle movement was at a parking garage where a company was developing a autonomous type of vehicle that could actually valet itself in a parking garage, which I thought was pretty interesting. But for the scalability, I was like, I just don't see it. I don't see how long it's going to take for every commercial vehicle to be able to autonomously park itself in some kind of parking garage. But what I did do is I brought up the fact of, where I do see where there'd be interesting is to be able to combine that with electric fleet inside depots. So that's where I met with Jeremy and a few other folks because we really wanted to pilot the fact of, because we know what's happening within the industry, right? Is that anytime that you have a fleet, it's going to be a big draw on the grid. So think about when you're trying to scale things up for the electric grid to be able to charge up, say, 100 vehicles, right? So, but what if we do this? What if we say we're not going to plug in 100 vehicles at one time? What we'll do is we'll say, for this particular fleet, we're going to charge up 10 at a time. And the way we would do that, we would do it off hours at nighttime where we could autonomously move vehicles without drivers from the charging locations and then back to their staging areas for the load. And that's where the autonomous piece came into. Now, the technologies change. HEVO has not. That's been steady with us with the wireless charging. We see that as really a couple areas where a company like DHL or any of our competitors see this, because if you know anything about charging, usually charging sitting in the front of the van. And so that means you have wires and you have all these things that are hanging in front of a truck that when you're back in, then you have to pull out. The wireless piece of it is that you can just pull over. There's no one has to unplug anything, and it just kind of goes in. Now, the autonomous piece of it is a big part, right? That means you don't have to have personnel. You're not having head counts of people moving around. And on top of that, you're not having people making human errors where they're running into other trucks or running over somebody or any of those kind of things. But that's how we all got started, as Jeremy mentioned. We looked at this. We put a big proposal with a lot of stakeholders involved to the Department of Transportation and Department of Energy. We didn't get awarded to that, but I think partially it's because the technology has changed. And I think we and what Jeremy maybe shares that we've been talking about trying to pilot some type of this type of program here in Detroit. So does that help,
Yeah,
Jeremy?
oh yeah. So I'm sure that can open up all kinds of points of discussion right
Yeah.
now. And upfront, we'll say that this is the step one of many steps to go. So we've been able to prove it and show it to the major decision makers in the DHL organization. Thankful to John and the team for helping us to get those many introductions. We were able to do this in front of a crowd of several hundred people, even in Austin recently. That was an event hosted by DHL called Now and Next, where it highlighted their acceleration to electrification, where you do see, of course, people are considering what's going on with electric cars. We're seeing all these announcements by major automakers that they're either slowing down or stopping electric vehicle manufacturing and their programs. At the same time, fleets won't slow down, especially DHL. They've set the bar higher than what they already had set it to accelerate even further and adopt even further. And yes, I know there's administrations out there who aren't very happy about the green revolution, if they will paint it that way. But what we see it as is a sustainable evolution that's natural, because these kinds of fleets have to find efficiencies. And at the same time, they have customers that are demanding that the supply chain be sustainable as well. And DHL is delivering on that promise and then some. So we got to see firsthand what it is that their interest is leaning into, because all the other technologies that were being talked about at this event and at other conversations that we've had in the last couple of months, just even last week, Anuja and myself joined John in a DHL hosted event that brought together people who were really on the policy side of the equation, thinking about how do we paint this in the right lens so that people, even at the current administration's level, would be interested to get involved with it. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is economics. And if the economics prove out, which they do, then everything else falls into place. So that being stated, Anuja, because I know we've had these discussions a lot, you've done this kind of pilot programming with all kinds of other customers, including recently with one of the major military departments as well. And so what is it that you've been hearing from your side on the autonomous side of what the cost savings could potentially be if these depots, these fleets were to swap over to the autonomous technology? What have you been hearing?
Yes, so we've done several of these deployments now, and with commercial fleet operators also, and with defense also. So without really naming anyone, but talking about the experience and speaking specifically from an economic standpoint, right? It doesn't matter what the current policies are or anything like that. It's totally agnostic to any of that. The ROI on that is at the end of the day the ROI, because that's what drives the organization and that's what drives their decisions. Um, Automation takes the heavy lift off of people's plates. It's not a job saver, but it's a people's time saver. So it frees operators from driving, parking, doing these tasks that otherwise can be automated by a machine. And so they can focus on mission critical work, which is planning, analyzing, leading, strategic decision making. In the case of defense deployments, and in the case of commercial, it's about doing more with that same amount of time when you shifted their time over. So inside the depot, instead of focusing on inspections and cleaning and charging and moving your vehicles around, if that same driver could now take that time and pick up that time and put it on the road, they are driving longer routes, delivering more packages, and in the same amount of time. So imagine tomorrow's package arrives to your home today as a customer. Thursday's package arrives on a Tuesday. So that's all acceleration, right? That's customer delight. So what we found is this economics actually helped them tremendously in terms of customer facing KPIs, but then it also helped them in terms of internal KPIs, so reducing collisions. Ross alluded to that as well. These depots are, you can call them structured environments because they are behind the fence. They are all employees of the organization, so it's more organized, but it's more of there is the chaos of reality that exists in there. So there are forklifts in some of these sites that are operating at the same time. We have done this now in day, and we have done it in night, rain and dust. We have done this where there is some mini construction going on the site, just because sites are always changing. And in all of that chaos of reality, there are service dogs, there are humans operating with other equipment and machinery, hard hat areas, etc., going under bridges, going in cell towers, causing electromagnetic interference, etc. And what they found is all of those can help reduce collisions, help increase safety on site, reduce idle time, reduce those emissions and gases, fewer incidents, and that's more productivity and more operating cash back into the organization's pocket. So
what do you see as potential time saving on just having the docking? I've heard numbers of like 15 minutes per shift or even higher. Is that an accurate statement, Anuja?
It is accurate. So there's a star on it. I mean, you can dock if you think about, see, the people who are naysayers will say, oh, I'm a valet driver. I can dock a vehicle in 5 seconds flat,
Right.
from there. But if you think about these vehicles operating at scale, right, which is what a fleet is, which is what a depot is, you have 10 vehicles that just finished a run and they're coming in. They're all going to be piggybacked behind each other. There's more idling. They're all going to get into the same cramped space, maybe one behind each other, maybe in 10 different lanes, you don't know. But now the time waste adds up. So as you get there, and then the precision. So you're going to move in, you're going to move forward, then you're going to move backward, and then you're going to realize, oh, I didn't dock properly. Okay, so you're going to do that again, back and forth. So again, the time adds up. So it's up to 15 minutes of time is a realistic number we've seen. So now when the machine does that,
I'm so sorry, and I was going to ask you, and also we've heard some outstanding savings in real cash, in something in the range of 4, maybe 5 figures per year per vehicle. Is that realistic?
It is realistic. It is absolutely realistic, and we have case study data that are pointing in that direction. Yes, absolutely.
So,
Able to
I'm sorry.
unpack that. You may be able to unpack that better actually, because
Yeah.
what level 2 chargers, if you were to compare, if I were to just turn that around for a second, if you were to compare level 2 charging, wireless charging, and fast charging, because sometimes, and maybe John, you can pitch in as well in the conversation, sometimes a vehicle doesn't need to charge from 0 to 100, right? You just need to go from 30 to 80, right? So there's all these planning.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, right? And that's why fleets make because you don't have all that anxiety that you do out in the public, You know, if Bill buys his vehicle and he's driving it to Indiana or wherever he's going to, he's worried about that. In a commercial fleet setting, especially in a P&D operations, you can control where you're going to send that vehicle. You can control, and you don't have to charge up every vehicle at 100% every time. If you know that you're going to have a close operations to the station, then maybe you only need to have 50% charge. And two things will happen with that, right? I mean, you're not drawing off the grid, but also importantly, you're going to save the battery life, right? Because batteries do not need to be charged up at 100% every time. Really, you want to be at 80%. So you can be really smart and use a lot of analytics to decide, okay, how I want to charge that. But I wanted to mention one piece about the autonomous people perspective of this. And I think you were part of that conversation when we were in Austin. One of the things that was pointed out is like, okay, we have the charging point at the station, but how about the autonomous piece? If we could take that autonomous and actually send that vehicle off to the destination where his deliveries are going to be taking place. Instead of having driver come to the station and then driving it off, how about the vehicle meets the driver at a certain area? So then he gets in it and does his deliveries. So, and we know that came from a pretty interesting people in that part of the conversation in Austin. So I see both his technology really evolving within, especially the P&D and delivery space quite a bit. But anyways, I hope that answers your question. Great.
It does, and it allows for actually the segue to Ross, because Ross has had the responsibility for all kinds of different fleet programs, development of vehicles, and he's obviously engaged with several companies that are working in the space indirectly or directly. So Ross, what are you seeing on your side that could be the true up on the economics? Do you see that coming together in many different arenas that you're operating in, both present and past?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, a lot of this is dual use. So we were looking at it in the Army logistically. And so not everyone can be good at everything, right? And it's an important point, because what Anuja and SteerTech do, there's nobody really that can hold a candle to them on their one-to-many controls. So they're controlling multiple vehicles with one person, right? That is a very hard task. But it's currently SteerTech is not moving from Atlanta to Dallas, right? There's companies that are doing that. And then the last mile delivery, how can we automate that? So this is a big pie, and it's going to take several companies coming together to eat that pie and make sure that we can remove humans as much as possible. We all know that that is the goal, right? The dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs. We want to get that with machines and autonomous packages that can actually execute that equal to or better than a human. And there's ample opportunity to do that. And then on the battlefield, the same thing, right? When I started the robotics journey with the Army, we were 2 humans to 1 robot. One was controlling the payload, one was driving it. Okay, we need to get where 1 human's controlling 12. Very, very key. And you don't want to have, whether it's fleet or the armed forces, you don't want to have a machine that then goes and requires a human to come plug it in. It just makes no sense. We need to automate every aspect that we can and use autonomy packages and technologies like yours, Jeremy, to quickly do this so that the entire supply chain is automated. And eventually we need to get to robots fixing robots, right? So now you have the maintenance all the way through delivery. And once you get to robots fixing robots, now humans can do what only humans can do. And that's think and apply perspective and plan and work through this. And sure, we'll have AI additive tools for us to work through, but we need to look at the entire supply chain, the entirety of autonomy, I've got autonomous vehicles all over Austin, Texas. You can get them as a pay ride. Well, guess what? They go somewhere and some human has to plug them in. Makes no sense whatsoever, right? You should just be able to charge and go. And these charging stations could be put strategically in different locations so that at different times of the day, the driverless vehicles are parked and are charging because they know that's the high traffic area for the time, and it saves time, and it's for the customer, and also saves money for the company. Those are my thoughts.
Good thoughts. So in this last part, we're going to open up the Q&A portion. Everybody that's joined us, you can see that there's a Q&A box that's in the bottom fold of the Zoom window. While you're putting in your questions there, I'll bring up a couple points because wireless charging on its own merit has some uniqueness. First and foremost is that obviously you don't have to have somebody plug it in. That's obvious. But our systems are also UL certified and SAE qualified for, we'll say, automotive requirements. And that makes us unique in this space. The other part being that we are moving fastly to only bidirectional systems that allows for the vehicles to operate like a backup battery storage to the home or to the facility so that you have what is effectively a power wall in your car that's being used when the grid goes out. So it's part of the redundancy planning for that home, for that facility, or for that community. The price for the hardware on the vehicle side, depending on the speed of charge, ranges anywhere from $250 automaker price. So that's our price to the automaker. So $250 for the low end, lower power systems that can do overnight charging to charging that can do it in minutes. That ranges up to about $750 on vehicle cost. The grid side equipment, that ranges from anywhere from approximately $1,200 for overnight charging to upwards of about $6,500 for extreme fast charging that can charge vehicles in a matter of minutes. So when we look at our cost profile versus other plug-in charging companies and equipment companies, what we see is that on the lower level of charging, overnight charging, we are the best priced overnight charger with bidirectionality in the space, whether it's plug-in or wireless. When we look at it from a point of view of extreme fast charging and being able to do that wirelessly, we, at a price of about $6,500 for the charging equipment on the grid side, is anywhere from 8 to 20 times cheaper than plug-in charging, just because we don't see a lot of extra material requirement to go from an overnight level 2 charger to what would be equivalent of a DC fast charger in the 300 kilowatt level on the plug-in charging side. So we've been able to achieve that because we've been able to optimize the technology for scale, so we don't have to increase all the material at the same kind of rate that you get with plug-in charging. And that has left us in a unique position that now that the subsidies are gone, we are actually competing on price directly. That's really nice for us because before the subsidies were only being given out to plug-in charging companies and they were being really cherry-picked for a few companies. Now that those subsidies are gone, it's game on. The playing field is now level, and that gives us the opportunity to go out there and win this business. So there are a couple of major automakers that we're engaged with. Obviously, with the fleets, they're looking for things like commercial electric vans, the Ford E-Transit, the Stellantis ProMaster, the Mercedes electric Sprinter, and then General Motors also has a commercial electric van as well. All those are the primary ones that are being used daily in different locations, not only in the United States, but some have already expanded into international uses as well. So those are the primary ones that we are trying to get engaged with to ensure that customers like DHL and others that want to seek out a commercial van with wireless charging can buy that vehicle ready equipped But until then, this will be an aftermarket solution, and there's some work that has to be done to do that. So, nonetheless, let's take some questions here. I know people have been populating a few. Thank you for putting those questions in, and obviously keep them coming. We will take about 10 minutes of questions, and I'll start with the first one. There's somebody that's asking about basically Tesla and how they have established themselves more or less as the market leader, and that at this moment, it looks like full autonomy is probably 99% solved for them. So the value of having a car that can drive itself, there will not be a reason to buy a non-autonomous vehicle for most people. So this is obviously in the framework of individual ownership, but obviously Tesla is expanding their robotaxi network as well, right? So can you speak to the risk if Tesla is winner takes most, and is HEVO tech strong enough in comparison to Tesla's wireless tech, where they still might be an acquisition candidate? Well, here's the deal. Tesla built wireless charging hookups into the Cybertruck. The Cybertruck has it. That was found out by the team over at Monroe, who Sandy Monroe is quite known within the space of automotive gearheads like myself. And so they did a teardown of the Cybertruck, and they found that there was an inductive hookup to it. And they went into the owner's manual, and sure enough, it was there. So Tesla, a couple of years ago, acquired a company, a wireless charging company out of Germany called Wiferion, supposedly for approximately $76 million. They took that team and basically kept the engineers. They sold off all the IP because the IP was only focused on robotics charging in warehouses. And from what we were told, they got rid of all the management team. So all they did was keep the engineers. So they were supposed to be working on wireless charging for the Cybercab and the Cybertruck. The Cybertruck team came out and said, hey, we're not going to do wireless charging, or we're not going to offer it for the Cybertruck now. So that means that it looks like they're only going to focus on the Cybercab with that tech. So that opens the door in principle to the idea that maybe we make a wireless charging solution for the 50,000 plus owners of Cybertrucks. That's an option. I'm not saying we're going to do that, but it's there. And if because it's there and we're constantly getting people asking us about it, why not is the answer. Obviously, we need to think about this through the lens of, does it help us to accelerate electric vehicle wireless charging? We don't know if that's the answer, but it's interesting. And so we'll leave that for another conversation for another day, but at least that gives you a little insight to how we think about it. At some point, Tesla can't be the only person, or the only company, I should say, out there, and by person, I mean Elon, that is making electric vehicle wireless charging really sustainably in a way that can be accelerated with these EVs automatically. We'll just say there's enough other major automakers out there who do not want to have to bend the knee to the wireless charging technology of Tesla like they had to potentially do for NACS, okay? All right, so you had mentioned off the grid a bit earlier. Does that mean the facility is generating its own electricity? Well, look, fleets are interesting. Most fleets don't own, first thing, they don't even own the vehicles. Many fleets, I'm not saying to the size of DHL, but many fleets that are not that size are actually leasing those vehicles from a third party. That goes for the facilities as well. And so most fleets also lease all their facilities, or at least a good portion of them. And so making changes to a facility isn't going to always be an immediate approval. So that means this off-grid portion of the question isn't as easily attainable as deploying EV charging is, because the grid is already supporting that level of at least overnight charging. And for what it's worth, most of these major fleets, and I can't speak truly to everything on DHL, John can certainly speak to this point, but most of these fleets are parking and charging for upwards of 14 hours per day. So that means they're in a dwell time or a dock time for quite some time. They don't all need to charge all night long. That doesn't make any sense, which comes back to this whole autonomous part where you can have a few chargers and the vehicles are moving themselves to those pods, parking, charging, moving off. Next ones are moving on. John, do you have any thoughts to this?
Well, I think you bring up a really good point, and I just wanted to mention one thing that I think it's relevant. In most of our facilities, I mean, it's not all electric, right? Because you can't. There's the right tool for the right job, right? So in some cases, it's going to be an ICE vehicle versus an electric vehicle. But you're right. As in for the facilities, yeah, I mean, in most cases, and I'm only speaking from the US, it'd be a low percentage of our electric vehicles in those buildings. We'll have, and then we also have some other technology. I mean, we have, propane vehicles and some other things like that. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that answers it completely, but
I think it gives it enough breadth that people can steer
yeah.
from there, if you will.
I mean, I think in the P&D space, it's like, I mean, and depending on the facility, depending on where it's at in the US, I mean, there's a lot of variables, right? So it's just, you can't just say every facility is going to be 100% electric. It's just not feasible at this time.
So I see a question here about when will the residential market be able to have installers, Revs Energy in Florida. The answer is that that's more of a focus on the passenger vehicle side and the residential side. What I can speak on that is that we have a couple of major automakers who are building in wireless charging with HEVO as the reference design that was selected for those vehicle platforms. The launch of those vehicles currently is scheduled for between 2028 to 2030. And so it takes some time for automakers to build in wireless charging into their series production programs, usually 4 to 5 years average. So thankfully, we've been on that course, that journey with those automakers now for the last couple of years. And it's going to take a couple more years for them to actually get it on what is their production vehicles, because these are new vehicle platforms that they will begin to offer to residential and commercial as commercial options as well in the next coming years. So by the end of this decade, we see wireless charging being on many, many different EV platforms. How long do you expect it to be before HEVO has significant revenues?
Shit.
I ask myself that almost every single day. And so the answer is it's all in turn with our major commercial fleet customers and in unison with the automakers together. HEVO is one of those unique case studies that it goes from, we'll say, limited revenue to all of a sudden we're in the 100 million plus revenue category overnight because of the level of the purchase orders. So it's a unique situation. The risk appetite for each investor is their own, I guess, or anybody that's following that. What is the status of the DHL deal? As I stated earlier, there is no DHL deal. This is purely to speak about what process that there is for potentially seeing these technologies coming forward. On-street parcel pickup could also be a wireless charging pad. Yes, is the answer. Okay, thank you very much for that question, Cormac. And that was answered by our friend Ross, who I think did a great job in spilling that one out too. When do you expect your products to be available to consumers, and what kilowatt does it charge at? Anywhere from 11 to 300 plus kilowatts available in the next coming 2 to 3 years. And that's with the automakers, but the commercial customers, the fleets, the major fleets can expedite that. Our technology is ready for it. And it's just a matter of the commercial fleets making the decision to scale to that. And it's a speed of interest, I guess. We got a few more here and then we'll wrap this up. What is involved in taking autonomous vehicles that make decisions for themselves and to create a network of autonomous vehicles that need coordination between them? Do you need a network level platform to accomplish this? Do the vehicles talk in small networks closer to the edge? For example, what decides which vehicles charge at and which ones wait? I'm going to send that over to you, Anuja.
I think that's a fantastic question. Whoever asked, Jonathan, fantastic question. Taking one vehicle autonomous and it works for itself is very different from a bunch of vehicles working autonomously towards a shared common goal or orchestrating, coordinating between themselves. So you nailed it. It is true that there is a level of coordination and a network level concept going on there. So what we use, I can speak to that, is a command and control center. So it is basically a handheld platform that allows one person to then remotely send missions to different vehicles so that they can coordinate amongst each other. So at the edge, they are locally coordinating for collision avoidance, for pacing themselves between each other and second order effects of one vehicle move forward, one vehicle reverse, one vehicle coordinated, etc., to globally coordinating between what is the endpoint goal that they need to achieve Are they doing this in waves? Are they doing this in groups, etc.? And then further you slice that into that platform has many layers, because there's a layer that's looking at the cybersecurity. There's a layer that is looking at route planning. There's a layer that's looking at charge planning. So how much charge does vehicle X require because it's doing a shorter route, and vehicle Y is doing a longer route, but vehicle Z has already come in at 60% battery, so it needs only 20%. There's that charge planning going on. So there's all these layers, then you combine together into that cognitive platform that is making all those decisions on behalf of, say, a human being would be doing that, and then, you know, based on rules that have been set by human beings, and only passing some decisions back to the human coordinator. So that way you're reducing the load of the cognitive load of the operator and allowing them to do more with less, and so now they can control the one-to-many using that approach.
That was an excellent answer to that. So I'm going to answer these last two, and then we're going to wrap it up. So there's a question about what's the overnight charging level? It goes up to 11 kilowatts, just like a standard plug-in charging system can do. I guess technically in some locations, overnight charging can even go up to 19.2 kilowatts. There's no limitation on the level of power that we can do. Our systems, our UL rated system is an 8 kilowatt system today, but we have an 11 kilowatt system coming out in the next couple of months here that we're taking to qualifications. And that one will be bidirectional. And so the other question was about the Porsche announcement, where they recently announced that they will have the induction systems. And so they're very expensive. Yes, you're right. They're somewhere between $8,500 to $10,000. But Porsche can do that. That's their customer base, and they feel like they can get that price. Obviously, that does not work for the majority of adopters, and certainly not for mass adopters. Our prices are meant to be coordinated to a kind of volume that gets this technology into every home, every curbside, every depot. And is there a plug-in and wireless charging combo set? We have done that in the past. We've gone away from it just because, frankly, we think the world is going to be wireless. Other things here are about whether we're an acquisition target. We want to make sure that this technology commercializes, and that's our bottom line. So, Farah.
I got a question.
Sure, go ahead, Ross. Shoot it.
There's people out there that don't want to wait 2 years, Jeremy. So let's say I had very deep pockets, which you don't, and I'm somewhere in New York City by you, or Austin, Texas by me, or Maryland, or Detroit, and I said, I can't wait. I want wireless charging today. What would that take, just for my one vehicle?
For one vehicle, it's not something that HEVO is going to be moving forward as its specific model. We would work with third-party, already existing aftermarket kitting up kind of companies that do this. They're mechanic shops that specialize in electric vehicle retrofits. And we have been in discussion with those kinds of guys where you as an individual could potentially come and do that, because we don't want to build up infrastructure and have to deal with any of that. We need to make sure that there's people out there that can do it. The biggest challenge with an aftermarket system is that it needs to be automaker approved, because we don't want to do anything that justifiably could void the warranty, or at least give the automakers the opportunity to promote that idea. So getting an automaker to approve is the most important part. We are in the process of that now with multiple automakers. And yes, Ross, on your next electric car, we do want you to have wireless charging from HEVO on it. So Farah, thank you for that question, Ross. Farah, why don't you take us home?
Yeah, thank you all for joining us today. We'll be sending out a recording in the next coming day or so. And please visit wefunder.com/HEVO to learn more. Thank you.
All right, team. Take care. Until next time.